Well, hello then, I do hope you're all well. Well, this is the first of our Wet Blankets cross-party select committee meeting that revolved around the ministerial code. And when I say wet blanket, I mean our very own Bodge Jobson's now ex-independent advisor, Lord Geidt. Oh! And let's just say he was gently eased into this committee meeting by the chairperson, Conservative MP William Wragg. But then our Tory MP asked him a bit of a zinger about trusting our Prime Minister Bodge Jobson. And the trouble is, trust and our Bodge Jobson don't exactly slip off the tongue, do they? You know, they're not like butter and bread, are they? No. And all I can say is, sorry if my hysterics put you off, but between his floundering and William Wragg's face, it was just too much to contain.
Him or her. And now, soon after your appointment, you told us, and I quote, that you felt you may be capable of engaging plausibly with the Prime Minister, building trust. How successful do you think you've been at that?
There have been a number of reforms to the role of the independent advisor, both on my appointment last year and in the course of some high-profile events that have passed through the year, including involving the Prime Minister. As for the importance of building that trust, I think I reflected a year ago that engagement with the Prime Minister would be an important part of generating that trust. I hope that for the Prime Minister, he can see that an independent advisor giving his advice objectively and impartially helps to undergird that trust. Of course, it's important to ensure that the independent advisor is capable of offering advice that might be difficult.
What constitutes trust in this context?
Something that needs to be built, and that is something to which I've been very committed in the course of my own tenure as independent advisor. Building that trust has indeed included engagement with the Prime Minister personally, but it's also mattered that I can communicate with his office too, and that applies, of course, with other ministers. But the sort of principal point of contact, this being the Prime Minister's code, of course, has been with the Prime Minister in the course of my time.
In terms of communicating with his office, in his reply to you, he talked about your offices miscommunicating with one another. So, what do you make of that?
Well, in the preface to my annual report, which the committee may have seen, I'm clear about the counsel that I wanted to ensure would.
All I can say is if he was talking in an accent like mine, he'd be laughed out in this building within a hair's breadth. But because it sounds rather posh and and he's a lord, he'd just get away with talking at a word salad.
Would be available to the Prime Minister through officials and his offices, and I'd rather stand by the account that I have given and published for the benefit of the scrutiny of the public.
Because you offered that advice, that counsel, or the offer of counsel was made available to senior officials.
That is what I've stated, and I did so in good faith.
Was it accepted or taken forward?
Well, the fact is that the Prime Minister offered a.
See William Wragg's face there? Oh, that just tells you everything you needed to know.
A response to my annual report, which surfaced references to his own obligations under the under the ministerial code. So, to that extent, the independent advisor had the satisfaction of the Prime Minister going on record about his own conduct according to the code.
Did it require him to go on record, though? I'm wondering, were you offering that friendly advice at an earlier stage that didn't require an on-the-record reply to you? It just required a conversation, perhaps?
Well, you mean between myself and the Prime Minister directly?
Yes.
Thank you. There's a real danger, I think, if the independent advisor is offering advice to any Prime Minister directly, when perhaps on some future occasion he, the independent advisor, might be required to investigate a minister, the Prime Minister, when he is, as it were, a participant in the advice that's been given. So triangulating these sorts of messages through senior officials and staff, I think, is a tried and tested and very important channel to ensure that the Prime Minister is properly briefed.
In that effort at triangulation, it would have been implicit, surely, that those senior officials might have nudged the Prime Minister maybe to pick up the phone to you and do it that way around.
That would have been one method, I expect. As I say in the preface to my annual report, I placed reliance on the assurances that I'd been given that the messages had been properly conveyed.
Okay. So in terms of that engagement and maintaining the Prime Minister's trust to the successful conduct of the role, is it possible to perform that role without it?
Without trust? Well, put the other way, I think that the attempt that I, as independent advisor, am making to build trust has already shown signs of some success. Confidential exchanges with the Prime Minister directly, insofar as it touches on other ministers. And you will have perhaps noted that the Prime Minister made reference to one example in his evidence before the Liaison Committee in speaking about the process that led to the Business Secretary offering an apology for some comments that had been made on broadcast media. And the Prime Minister, in his evidence, alluded to the fact that it was that drew from an exchange that he had with the independent advisor. So I'm sorry to be answering the question from a different direction, but I do think there is a strong case for asserting that building trust is an important aspect.
But if one aspect of the role of the independent advisor is simply to decide whether or not the ministerial code has been breached, why is trust necessary?
May I just note that I'm not the arbiter of the code, and nor am I. I don't pretend to be a philosopher on the code either. And I may find myself returning to this point during this session, but I do conceive my own role as a practitioner. Being responsible for the operation of the code that is put my way, and to ensure that it can be implemented fairly and objectively.
Well, hypothetically speaking, if there was a great deal of trust or no trust whatsoever between the Prime Minister and the independent advisor, that would have no bearing at all on whether you could judge whether the ministerial code had been breached or not.
But beyond that point, I think the availability of trust improves the prospect for communication. And as in the example I've cited, and indeed in a number of others, I think it helps facilitate the smoother running of these processes.
Thank you. Karen Smith.
Thank you, Chair.
Again, sorry for the laughing, but if it was a boxing match, I think they'd have thrown the towel in pretty early. And if it were a horse race, it'd have been probably put down. I know it sounds a bit much, but That was painful, wasn't it? Even in his resignation letter, he was a bit of a wet blanket about it, wasn't he, really? Oh, Jesus. Anyway, I shall leave the video here. Until the next time, I shall bid you farewell and take care.